webinar entitled Business Research. This will be hosted by, by our speaker. Her name is Vanessa Tupayan. She is an educator. Earned her master's degree at Cebu Normal University, and currently she's taken up doctoral philosophy in research and evaluation in the university. So without further ado, welcome our speaker for today's webinar.
Hello, good morning, everybody. So today I'll be sharing some insights about business research. So for a couple of objectives for this study, let's begin with some objectives first. Promoting and supporting small businesses in the Aurora Business Center, building a business ecosystem to encourage economic development. And to begin, you might be asking, what is business research? To simply put, business research refers to the process of gathering information on all areas of business with the purpose of leveraging the data to promote organizational growth, increase sales, and maximize profit. It involves a lot of systematic management activities that help companies decide which products or services will perform great, will perform well, sustainable in the market, and will therefore be most profitable to produce. So basically, business research is a research about how the market is doing, generally speaking, and leverage for your own business to be sustainable. Now, we're talking about this because this is very important. Business research provides companies with comprehensive data on the target customers' preferences, purchasing behavior, demographics, and pinpoints or pain points. Such information allows the business to strategize and create more effective marketing plans. These plans must resonate with the target audience. A thorough overview of the overall market will also give the business an understanding of market trends and market demands so that plans and strategies can be modified or can be devised accordingly. Now, another important area of business research that can be classified is the primary and secondary research. And we talk about basically the sources of information here. Primary research refers to the collection of first-hand data. When we say first-hand data, these are first accounts of data, generally directed from the source. For example, if we talk on some victims of atrocities, we interview them directly, and they become the primary source of information. Some common methods of primary research are surveys, interviews, and observations. The researcher is there to really observe it, either through interviews, observations, or through a survey. Primary direct with the person that experienced the matter. Conversely, secondary research uses existing data that is already available. Now, what are the examples of this? For example, you go to the internet, you research articles or published work that are related to the pandemic, the vaccine, then a lot of related literatures that you will see there, and those in this context become the secondary information source of the research. Quantitative and qualitative research approaches or methods have different types. Now, for the quantitative, we have quite a lot. We can talk on about, for example, descriptive. When we say descriptive, you describe the current status of an identified variable, and the research projects are designed to provide systematic information about a particular phenomenon. The researcher does not usually begin with a hypothesis, but is likely to develop one after collecting the data. You don't develop a hypothesis first. That's basically for the descriptive type of quantitative design. We call them designs. Some commonly used quantitative methods of business research are experimental. Also, aside from descriptive, we have experimental research that refers to research studies that adhere to the scientific research design. And this type of research aims to prove or disprove a theory or hypothesis. Earlier, when we say descriptive, you don't create hypothesis yet. You create that after you have gathered the information. That's basically one of the differences. Businesses generally use experimental research to study consumers' behavior trends or traits. And then we have the survey research. This is very common also in business. We conduct survey, and this is one of the most commonly used methods of data collection because it is relatively easy and inexpensive to leverage. Surveys can be conducted in many different ways, such as through social media posts or email surveys, or the most common, you visit in malls, and then somebody will give you a form for you to fill out. It's a form of a survey that they're doing to determine some kind of trend in the business related to what they are offering, what the company is offering. And then also, just before I discuss the qualitative research, most common also are correlational. In this type of design, relationships, as the term depicts, the type of research will recognize trends and patterns of data in this type of design. Relationships between and among a number of facts are sought and interpreted. Let's say, for example, is there a correlation between the number of mall visitors after and during the pandemic? Is there a correlation? Did the pandemic affect the number of mall goers over time with the presence of the COVID-19 virus? Was there a correlation that when the pandemic hit, little customers went to the mall, and when it eased, a lot of people went back to the mall? So something like those, if you wanted to find out correlation. And then we have causal comparative, as the word implies, you compare. And then, of course, the one that I've mentioned earlier already, the experimental. And of course, we have the qualitative research method. Some commonly used qualitative methods of business research are interviews. Interview is a way of gathering data for qualitative research. But when we talk of designs that are under qualitative research methods, there are a lot. Case study is one. The detailed study of specific subject. This method used to produce in-depth, multifaceted information on complex issues in the world setting. You talk on about the characteristics, the trends of a particular subject. That's one example, the case study. We also have the very common phenomenology. This talks about the lived experiences and creating meaning and essence out of the people lived experiences. We have thematic analysis. That's another qualitative research method. And as I've said, when you conduct this different qualitative research designs, one way of doing that is through in-depth interviews. Now, how do you do the interviews? Usually, there is a guide questions. There are no specific guidelines of doing the interview, but at least you have the interview guide. It does not end there, because once you come up with an interview guide, you have to validate that. You cannot just come up with an interview guide without validating that. Where do you validate that? You validate that with a lot of experts. If you're talking about psychological behavior, yada, 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 mental, and all, so you have to validate that with a psychologist, with a counselor, with neurological doctors. When you're doing a lot of research studies, academic, then you might want to tap doctors that have already done their dissertations or a thesis. That's how you validate interviews. But again, the point of the matter here is that you just don't conduct interview just for the sake of doing that without validating the interview guide. It could be semi-formal, it could be formal, it's up to the researcher. And what else? In qualitative research, the most important instrument is the researcher himself or herself. Why? Because you do the interview, you do everything. After the interview, you transcribe. After transcribing, you get into the meanings. When you get into the meanings, the significant statements, you gather all the significant statements, you formulate the themes that emerged out from the interview. Everything is done by yourself, and then you get back to the interviewer if the transcriptions were done right. And once you have the agreement of the person you have interviewed, then everything is good to go. By the way, another difference between qualitative and quantitative business research is that we often call participants when it's quantitative, and we call informants. We call people informants if it's related to qualitative research method. I don't want you to be confused. It's qualitative research method or approach, quantitative research method or approach. But when it comes to the different types, those are called designs already. So we have experimental design, correlational design, phenomenological design, case study. These are designs part of the different methods. Although it would take a couple of time for maybe longer time for me to discuss a little about another method that a lot of businessmen are into, is the business feasibility study, wherein this is a simplified way than the research. You identify the problem, the opportunities. If somebody is familiar with the SWOT method, this is very applicable. You determine the strength, the weaknesses, the opportunities of the business dynamic that you are doing. So I've mentioned SWOT analysis, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's another way of doing research related to business, which is easier. And this is very common actually. Before, let's say, for example, your friend is wanting to franchise a 7-Eleven store. She has all the money to get the franchise, but the question is, where will she place the franchise for the 7-Eleven not to be closed out, for it to be sustainable, and for her to, get the ROI of her investment? So another option for that is doing a feasibility study. We get into the people who would be the possible customers. We assess the successful outcomes and the range of costs and benefits associated with several alternatives in solving the problems that could arise. So that's all for this presentation. If you have questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to raise those. We have a limited time for this discussion, so we just tried to capsulate everything the best way we could. Again, thank you so much. I hope you guys have a good one. Bye now.